Thomas Godolkin was devoted to developing ever more powerful soups.
Why would Vought want that? Why would Homelander want that?
Welcome back, everyone. It's Charlie. This will be my full video for The Boys Gen V Season 2 Episode 4 video. There are a whole bunch of Easter eggs, WTF moments, so we'll break it all down. If you're brand new to the channel, be sure to subscribe to get all the episodes, because it's getting crazier and crazier this season as we go along. We're starting to get some more clues about Dean Cipher's true plans, especially for Marie and the true nature of her powers as well, too. The episode title was Bags, a reference to the blood bags that Cipher had Marie practice with to use her bloodbending ability, trying to optimize her powers so that she can actually become more powerful, fully utilize her potential. Very long-running trope of all superhero media that most superheroes, especially X-Men based like biologically based powered people, don't ever fully understand their powers. Only a few ever really understand how they work. There are a lot of big reveals about Cipher's character, confirming a bunch of big theories. I think we've actually figured out what's going on between him and Thomas Godolkin and what the actual power set is, like what's really going on with Thomas Godolkin, who is the charcoal briquette, to make more Anakin Skywalker Star Wars references. There are many Star Wars references in the episode. Looks like Thomas Godolkin crawled out of Mustafar, that burning lab that blew up in the flashback at the beginning of the series, eventually fathered a child, and is now jumping into his mind because maybe Thomas Godolkin is the one with actual powers, which is why Marie didn't detect any compound V flowing in his veins, and they don't think that he is a super, but it's actually Thomas Godolkin, his father, who's the super, but they're mentally psychic-based powers, because the character is also based on a comic book character who runs a team that is a parody of the X-Men, and he's meant to be an evil version of Professor X. So it just makes sense that they're just doing that with the Thomas Godolkin character. We literally just had the Deadpool and Wolverine movie with a version of this in Emma Corrin's Cassandra Nova character, who is basically Professor X's evil twin. Just imagine that, but if it were actual Professor X. But in the actual opening scene, they start with a broadcast from Firecracker's show where she makes a Matrix reference to Gatrix, makes all kinds of slurs and terminology, like basically everything you would see when you open up your feed on, like just all the terrible stuff that you could possibly say, ultra-conservative, ultra-religious. Most of the stuff you hear her yelling about all the time on her show during The Boys' main show when she's not busy being milked like a cow by Homelander. If you didn't realize, the actress who actually plays Firecracker is lesbian in real life. It adds an extra thick layer of comedy and irony to all of Firecracker's scenes with all the stuff she shouts about. We actually see there's a segment on the news show where they force Kate to lie about Jordan's truth bomb, telling the truth about her attack, because Homelander and Vought want to use that as part of their anti-Starlight agenda, so they need people to believe that the Starlighters are the bad guys. They complain about more DEI at the school. One of the other ones says that Jordan is a groomer. We also hear Cipher berating Kate inside his office, leaving a meeting, calling her a loser, and to fall in line. She sounds like she also doesn't want to continue with the lies about Jordan not being her attacker, but because of their agenda, Homelander and Vought need to keep pushing that angle, so they're just forcing her to do this, the same way they're forcing Jordan and Marie to fight in the episode. Then they have a meeting with that Vought PR guy that you've seen in previous seasons of The Boys. He's appeared many times on the main show. He's also the guy that got his junk blown off having sex with a super. That was like one of the big jokes when they first introduced the character, is the guy's junk blown off. Vought brings him in to do stuff like he's doing here in this episode all the time. The last time we saw him, he was coming up with a superhero identity for Ryan, wanting to call him Homeboy, basically the show's version of Superboy, which Ryan obviously was not a big fan of.
Wow. Oh, buddy, can you believe that?
This time he's come up with a superpowered MMA fight, making fun of every trope you could possibly imagine, because Cipher wants to sacrifice Jordan to the populace. Basically, everybody's pissed off about her big reveal, and he wants to appease everyone by having her get her ass beat on live TV. He's also using this to slowly help bring Marie to the dark side, like he's trying to twist her evil for his own purposes. We'll actually dig into this later in the episode too, because if it's Thomas Godolkin who has the ability to jump into other people's minds, control people psychically, like it seems like he's doing at the end of the episode, and he's just controlling his son and then also jumps into Jordan's body later during their actual fight. Early long-term theory, he's also trying to train Marie's powers up so that she becomes more powerful and then take over her mind the way that it seems like he's taken over his son's mind. Like, it seems like he's just training up another vessel for himself to jump into, a more powerful vessel in Marie eventually. They then come up with the idea to make nice with Kate and use her to spy on Cipher and learn more of his secrets. The enemy of my enemy is my friend, which they literally reference in the episode, and eventually do bond. So like the idea is that Kate is come back into the fold now. They're all friends again. Emma learns that one of her new friends, Allie, is super rich and she can manipulate her bush hair, winds up calling her Bushmaster later in the episode, who is the actual name of a Marvel character from the Moon Knight comics. She winds up actually using the power later in the episode to save Emma's life. Starting here in the episode, there are a couple times and later in the episode when they call out Emma's eating disorder and the way that it messes with her ability to use her shrinking and growing powers. They eventually imply that she's going to achieve self-actualization at some point and she won't need to do all these messed up things in order to use her powers on command. Pretty simple arc for her. They introduce Allie's brother Greg, who's in Emma's class with Modest Monarch, the ultra-conservative woman who wants them all to be super slutty and become grifters on social media, basically using tragedy to gain bigger social media followings, essentially become a grifter. That's what she's doing. Not really clear if there's going to be some big surprise twist with his character. The way they present him in this episode, he's just meant to be like a nice dude who wants to help them, but there might be something else going on with his character, and we don't really know what his powers are either. They set up the plot where they're going to try and infiltrate Cipher's special vault to reveal what's going on with Thomas Godolkin, which he himself then comes clean about later in the episode. Part of the idea that you learn, and they kind of got into this in previous episodes too, the first couple of the season, is that Cipher always seems like he's a couple steps ahead, I think confirming the theory that Thomas Godolkin's powers are actually psychic-based powers. It would also track with the idea that Cipher previously said there's not much that goes on this campus that I don't know about. It'd be really easy for a psychic to be able to say something like that. It would also explain why he's not surprised by anything, because he's just reading minds of anybody in proximity to him, so he knows exactly what's going on, especially the stuff with the camera later in the episode, which he is completely unbothered by, because he knew everything that was happening while it was happening. This would also explain why Kate has had so much trouble breaking into his mind, cracking his mind, pushing him the way that she talks about. All because there might be a more powerful psychic inside his mind, and it's Thomas Godolkin, his father. Maybe they're setting up a twist with like a Jean Grey versus Professor X inside the boys' universe with Kate in Thomas Godolkin at some point. They revealed that there's an in-universe Vought ESPN parody show like ESPN3 hyping up the fight night, showing previous fights. There's the Deep versus Queen Maeve, which they call Battle of the Sexes, which was based on an actual real-life tennis match back in the 70s between Bobby Riggs and Billie Jean King. There's one between Eagle the Archer, their Hawkeye parody that we saw in the main show, Blind Spot, the Daredevil parody that Homelander absolutely wrecked when they tried to put him on the 7. Then they call Homelander a god, which is kind of what Homelander wants, like it's all part of this long-term sage plan. God Emperor Homelander, essentially.
And some legends become gods.
You also notice, as part of this big fight, a lot of their messaging tries to make Jordan seem like the villain. Like the trans kid is the villain, all the aspects about him and her that are trans are the bad parts. She and Kate bond then over Kate being harassed online in a similar way when everybody hated her Flipped movie, which got absolutely terrible reviews, like super low Rotten Tomatoes score. Then they bond over both doing super slutty things when they were freshmen, so the idea is that Kate is now friends with them, like they've kind of made nice. She tries pushing the guard, big WTF moment here, showing that her powers are still on the fritz when he starts humping the garden gnome. Maybe they'll use her wonky powers for more surprises like this in critical moments in the future when she's trying to save some big moment, or like some big WTF thing will happen and her powers will go on the fritz again. But the whole idea is that inside the vault they find the hyperbaric chamber with Thomas Godolkin's original burnt body, charcoal briquette, like I said, Anakin Skywalker on Mustafar. The way that Cipher explains it at the end of the episode, it is his father, so Mr. Gold, as in Mr. Godolkin, he's just his son that carried on his work, but the way his powers work, and it seems like he jumps psychically into Jordan's mind, it actually seems like Thomas Godolkin is the one with actual psychic Professor X-based powers who's actually just jumped into his son's mind at various points, and that's why Cipher says, "Don't worry about my father, he's fine." Probably because his consciousness is not limited to his broken body here. And like I said, that's probably why Marie didn't detect any Compound V in Cipher's body, all because Thomas Godolkin's powers to control other people's minds, jump into other people's bodies psychically, isn't dependent on those other people having Compound V in their veins. Marie then goes to the danger room and does more training. Test 1 is just moving the blood bags, giving the episode its name, Bags, without causing them to burst. This is basically her learning to use her ability as a form of telekinesis, moving large people around using the same trick. She makes a Yoda Star Wars reference, so Star Wars is also canon to the boys' universe. I also like the idea that Thomas Godolkin, even though more of an Anakin Skywalker burnt charcoal briquette reference here, is more of the Emperor Palpatine of the show, trying to eventually jump into Anakin Skywalker's body, if we're calling Marie Moreau the Anakin Skywalker of the show this season. Somehow Palpatine returned. Somehow Thomas Godolkin returned. That's literally what they do in the sequel trilogy. The whole idea is that Palpatine just jumps into other clone bodies of his own. I think they also confirm some of these details when he also tells Marie not to try and use hand motions as a crutch when she's using her powers. Like, your hand motions do nothing. You don't need to use your hands to use your powers, because Thomas Godolkin is a quadriplegic and he has psychic powers, so he doesn't need to use his limbs to use his powers. Also, the idea that Marie would be much more effective in a fight if she were using her hands to actually punch people, like actual fight people, and then using her bloodbending ability to do different things, making her a much more effective fighter. There's a very, very on-the-nose Elon Musk joke naming the goat Elon, saying that they named them after buttholes in case they die. Doesn't really matter because the donkeys are buttholes. Basically confirming Elon Musk is also canon to the boys' universe. I don't think that they mentioned him in the show, in the main show, before. He's probably viewed as a big competitor of Vought, like Tesla, his other companies, probably competitor companies to Vought, so they probably hate each other on a corporate level. Cipher then reveals he already knows everything Marie is trying to do, learn more about Project Odessa and how he's connected to her birth. Now we're actually wondering if he's actually trying to train her up. Thomas Godolkin is trying to train Marie up so that he can jump into her more powerful body. Maybe he was also using Project Odessa to try and create a more powerful body for himself to jump into eventually, no matter what. Just because she then asks, why would Homelander want somebody who's more powerful than himself? Because he definitely wouldn't. He would kill them on the spot. Why would Vought want someone more powerful than Homelander? Mostly because they want a deterrent for Homelander if he went crazy, which they do in the comics. There is a Homelander deterrent, but the way they treat that on the TV show is that they've actually replaced that role with a Ryan character. So now it kind of seems like Thomas Godolkin might be working against Homelander and Vought towards his own ends, Emperor Palpatine style, trying to jump into the Anakin Skywalker that is Marie Moreau once she is suitably powerful enough. What's not totally clear right now, though, is how much of Cipher, his son, Mr. Gold, Thomas Godolkin's son, we've actually spoken to, and how much is just Thomas Godolkin himself speaking through his son. Like, who is speaking when, who are we actually listening to during a lot of these scenes? Is his son complicit with Thomas Godolkin in helping him, or is he also just a prisoner as much as anybody else is forced to do this because his father won't let him do anything else? She winds up popping Elon Musk the GOAT, so R.I.P. Elon Musk GOAT in the boys' universe. They replace it with her next test with a Julia Fox GOAT. I wasn't really familiar with her, but she's apparently an actress and a model known for being extremely eccentric. When Cipher reveals he knows everything that Kate and Jordan did breaking into his house in the vault to see Thomas Godolkin, I think this also confirms the theory that Thomas Godolkin is aware, like psychic-based powers, so he probably just detected that they were there inside the room with him, and then because he's also inside his son's body, his son knows everything that he saw inside the room. You don't need a security camera for that. He's like a human security camera, basically, in that case. You also remember, like I said, Cipher claimed there's not much that happens on campus that he doesn't know about. If he were a powerful psychic, that would make a lot of sense. But remember, we're talking about his father, Thomas Godolkin. Emma makes a reference to the HBO show The Wire, great TV series if you have not seen it. She then uses her powers and the new Starlighter team to work together to plant the camera, thinking that they're going to spy and catch him in the actual act. Which they do not, because, like I said, if he's a powerful psychic, it seems like that's why he's one step ahead, and he's not bothered by anything that happens during the episode. There are also a couple of funny moments where he seems like he's just messing with Emma on purpose. They hold the fight at one of Vought's hotels. Vicor, the Thor parody from an earlier episode, is one of the commentators. Emma starts calling Allie Bushmaster. Kate then makes fun of the security guard again because it's the same one from the Garden Gnome incident. Bet he is pretty raw. Allie then uses her Bushmaster powers to turn the water off, saving Emma's life, who winds up in the toilet inside Cipher's room that they're using, while he also reveals everything he knows about what Kate just did. Like I said, during all these scenes, the reason why Cipher seems so casual is because maybe if Thomas Godolkin, his father, is inside his brain and he's a powerful psychic, he already knows everything that they're thinking, so he already knows everything that's happening while it's happening, which is why he's just kind of letting it unfold, messing with them. That's kind of what he does during the rest of the episode, just messes with Kate and the others for the rest of the episode until he directly calls them out through the hidden camera. I think this is also why he goes to the bathroom. He's messing with Emma, giving her a full shot of the balls. She's not going to forget that anytime soon. Very traumatic. But notice he doesn't actually go to the bathroom. He just sits on the toilet, checking his phone casually, because he was making Emma think that he was giving her the opportunity to plant the camera when he knew about it the whole time. Then he calls them out through the camera, calling it sloppy work. He does not seem bothered by it at all, and reveals that he does technically have powers, like I said, probably psychic powers, and it probably Thomas Godolkin, his father, who's the one with powers, which is why there's no compound V in his veins. So it's why he, Cipher, can be human, but still have powers. Because it's his father who's jumped into his brain. Also, when it seems like he jumps into Jordan's brain to make Jordan start fighting Marie in the actual pit when they're kissing and then they start fighting, you can actually hear a little popping sound, like a sound effect, I think meant to show you when Thomas Godolkin jumps into other minds.
Watch this.
One of the other important details here too is that Cipher says if Kate were at 100% of her power levels, they weren't on the fritz, and he didn't have any powers, she would be able to have stopped the fight. So I think they are teasing an eventual matchup against Thomas Godolkin versus Kate once Kate's powers actually get better later this season. They'll probably use that to give Kate some measure of redemption for her actions during season 1. So if it wasn't clear at the end of the episode here, I think what Cipher is doing is it's Thomas Godolkin, his father, jumping from his brain into Jordan's brain, then using Jordan's powers to punch Marie, and Marie trying to defend herself using her powers against Jordan, almost accidentally killing her. When she does this, notice that there's like a weird look that Cipher has on his face, so maybe it's possible to actually kill Thomas Godolkin if he dies while he's trapped inside somebody else's body. Just because he started to make that weird face when Marie was using her powers to bloodbend Jordan and he was inside Jordan's mind. Maybe that will be part of the key of how you kill Thomas Godolkin, powerful psychic. You kill him while he's trapped in somebody else's mind. So just based on all the new evidence in episode 4, it just seems like they're doing more of an evil Professor X spin with Thomas Godolkin in the G-Men from the Boys comics, who are meant to be an X-Men parody. Pretty much all superheroes in the Boys universe are meant to be evil in some way. But everyone, post all your theories in the comments below. Do you actually think that it's Thomas Godolkin, his father, who has the psychic powers and has just been using his son, Mr. Gold, aka Cipher, and that's what was going on in the episode and the previous episodes? Do you think he's just trying to prepare Marie to become more powerful so that he can then take over her body permanently? We're only about halfway through the series, so there are probably a couple other real big reveals, and they'll probably start involving what's going on with Homelander on top level and the other big Boys characters. Still a lot of crossovers that they'll probably have in the rest of the season. What I'll do is my episode 5 video we'll post next week after they release it. There won't be quite as much of a delay just because there aren't so many episode videos that everybody's dropping at the same time, so it should be a little bit easier to get it out faster. I just posted my Marvel Zombies episode video. I'll put a link for that in the description below. Everybody click here for my new Alien Earth finale video, and click here for all my other Gen V episodes. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.